What's behind the meetings between European leaders and Xi Jinping? South China Sea busy with Chinese carriers return and US-Flippino ship sinking exercise. If Beijing invades Taiwan, world trade will be destroyed, UK Foreign Secretary. Senators urge sanctions on Huawei Cloud, Alibaba Cloud. France, Germany, and EU in discord over resuming the on-hold China-EU investment deal.
Since the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, Xi Jinping won his third term as president, European rulers and officials have shown great interest in meeting with him to strengthen their relations. Despite criticism of the CCP by the European Parliament and various leaders, visits and meetings of European officials in Beijing have been commonplace in recent months. Among others, French President Emmanuel Macron paid a state visit to Beijing a few weeks ago, accompanied by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. This visit was just a few days after Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez did the same. Also, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock arrived just over a week ago in the northeastern port city of Tianjin, following a visit by Chancellor Olaf Scholz last November. Josep Borrell, the European Union's foreign policy chief, was scheduled to visit China a few days ago, but tested positive for COVID, forcing him to cancel his trip. But being a bloc of powerful countries seeking to emancipate themselves more and more from the rest of the world powers, why so much interest in meeting and forging ties with the CCP? The reasons are linked to the consequences of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and the decisive role that the Chinese regime is playing, or could play. Xi is Vladimir Putin's main ally, and as such is a key player in defining the conflict, either by interceding as a mediator or by supporting Russia militarily in a possible war on a global scale. Europe is suffering firsthand the effects of the war. Moreover, the energy crisis and resulting inflation are dulling any attempt at economic growth in the aftermath of the pandemic. It is becoming increasingly clear that many European leaders are calling for Xi's help. They want him to talk to Ukraine's president and Russia's. But what might the cost of this be? The European Union is particularly concerned about Putin's plans to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. It also fears that the CCP will supply weaponry to Russia in this context. Beyond geopolitics is business. The European Union and the CCP conducted trade in excess of $2.5 billion daily last year, and the Europeans do not seem to want to put that at risk. Europe has not agreed to join a crusade with the United States to prevent China from becoming a world leader. On the contrary, it appears Europe is betting on maintaining the status quo and good relations with the CCP as long as this serves its interests and objectives. Finally, on Wednesday, April 26th, Zelensky spoke with Chinese leader Xi Jinping about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and assured that it was a long and meaningful call. The first reports about the conversation assured that it was on peaceful terms, and with Xi's intention to promote a peaceful and non-aggression scenario. What was behind this call, and was it at the insistence of European leaders? If so, what is the price they will have to pay? The South China Sea is now busy with drills combining US and Philippine forces, and the return of China's aircraft carrier. The Japanese Ministry of Defense said that China's aircraft carrier, the Shandong, left the Western Pacific and headed back to the South China Sea, where it usually conducts operations. RFA reported that 10 days before this, the Chinese carrier operated less than 400 miles from the US island of Guam. According to the Japan Joint Staff, the 7-vessel Shandong carrier group was detected on April 24th, around 224 miles, or 360 kilometers, south of Yonaguni Island in Okinawa Prefecture. Yonaguni Island is Japan's southernmost island, only 110 miles from Taiwan. The group then began to move toward the South China Sea, including a carrier-based fighter J-15 jet and a Z-18J helicopter that were spotted practicing simultaneous landings and takeoffs. Taiwan's Ministry of Defense also confirmed the Shandong's passage through waters southeast of the island and into the South China Sea. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. presided over a joint military exercise with the US to sink a ship in the South China Sea. The Financial Times reported on April 26th that this is a rare maneuver overseen by the president of the Philippines for the first time. In addition, this move highlighted the largest combined annual drills between the allies in over 30 years. The ship-sinking exercise started with HIMARS. The combined forces unleashed a volley of fire on the ship, a former U.S. corvette from the Second World War that the Philippine Navy decommissioned 2 years ago. Following this salvo, the ship was finally sunk by missiles fired by F-16 and F-35 fighters, and shore and ship-based guns, helicopter strikes, and missiles. The exercise occurred when Chinese Coast Guard personnel recently intensified their harassment of Philippine ships in the South China Sea, near Manila-controlled territory. Besides, it strongly indicates the Philippines' intention to restore the country's military alliance with the U.S., and fend off Chinese aggression in the disputed waters.
In a speech on April 25th, UK's Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said that if China's regime invades Taiwan, world trade will be destroyed and the global economy is unlikely to avoid a catastrophe. The Guardian cites James saying that no country could shield itself from the consequences of a war in Taiwan. He added that he shuddered when thinking about the financial and human consequences of the war between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait. The British foreign minister called on all parties not to take unilateral action to change the status quo on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. James said about half the world's container ships pass through these vital waters, the Taiwan Strait, every year, laden with goods bound for Europe and far corners of the world. Taiwan is a prosperous democracy and a crucial link in global supply chains, especially for advanced semiconductors. A war across the strait would not only be a human tragedy, it would destroy world trade worth $2.6 trillion, according to Nikkei Asia. No country could shield itself from the consequences. Distance would offer no protection from this catastrophic blow to the global economy, and to China most of all.
The Biden administration has been urged to strictly target Huawei Cloud and other Chinese cloud computing companies for undermining U.S. national security. A letter from a group headed by Senator Bill Hagerty said the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, affiliated companies are working with foreign entities keen on compromising the security and economic interests of the U.S. and its allies. They therefore urged, "We urge you to use all available tools to engage in decisive action against these firms through sanctions, export restrictions, and investment bans, and to further investigate PRC cloud computing service companies." Huawei Cloud has recently introduced Sky Computing Constellation, which makes data faster and easier to use in the cloud. However, it is also a joint project with Changsha Tianyi Space Science and Technology Research Institute, which is already sanctioned for assisting Russia with satellite imagery. The lawmakers also drew attention to Alibaba Cloud, which they said is known for offering services to the Chinese military, security, and intelligence services. The senators said, "We are gravely concerned by Alibaba Cloud, Aliyu, the cloud services arm of Alibaba, a national champion company of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, having opened 2 cloud data centers in Santa Clara, California in 2015, in the heart of Silicon Valley." Thus, the letter said Alibaba Cloud should be added to the Commerce Department's export controls list. They added that the data centers gave different cloud computing services. They first helped Chinese companies in the US, and then expanded their scope to other clients worldwide. The letter noted that the Biden administration should also pay attention to other Chinese firms, such as Baidu Cloud and Tencent Cloud. The senators suggest probes and measures on the company's direct and indirect operations. Europe's China policy is already fragmented, but now the EU's 2 most influential governments disagree on reviving a stalled investment deal with Beijing. According to Politico, on the EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, or CAI, France thinks it's not urgent or feasible, while Germany wants to reactivate it. The deal was politically agreed upon in December 2020, but later stalled after China sanctioned EU officials in retaliation for European bloc sanctions over its human rights record in Xinjiang. French President Emmanuel Macron said he and Xi had talked about the CAI just a little bit. During his Beijing visit in early April, he told Politico, "I was very blunt with President Xi. I was very honest. As far as this is a European process, all the institutions need to be involved, and there is no chance to see any progress on this agreement as long as we have members of the European Parliament sanctioned by China. On the other hand, an insider said German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was open to reactivating the investment deal, even as said that it requires prudence to avoid political risks. One senior EU official who requested anonymity said, "It is surprising Scholz still thinks this is a good idea, despite the vastly changed context from a couple of years ago. Germany has been the loudest advocate for the CAI because of its vast manufacturing stakes in China, especially in the car and chemical industries. According to the publication, the CAI would have made investing and IP protection in China slightly more convenient for European companies. But critics condemned the weak worker rights and questioned its enforceability. Politico pointed out that Beijing quickly retaliated after some European lawmakers condemned its human rights records in Xinjiang. It is now suggesting the removal of sanctions on those who have turned friendlier to China in a bid to bring back the investment deal.